They lost their at the end of the movie, for sure.
I'm so glad. I'm so pleased to hear people responding to the third act of the movie.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk with you about.
Yeah.
If I'm the Bond producers,
Yeah.
and I'm watching that third act, I'm going, this mother just topped us. Can you talk about if I felt like I was watching a Star Wars movie in that, not to bring up Star Wars because the Twitter but in that it's intercutting across like 3 spheres of action the way Star Wars does. I was just wondering, how did you lock in on that? Was that from early concepting, or?
Early concept was you had all of these characters and I had to give them all their things to do. So the entire third act, I knew what Tom was going to be doing. I knew he was going to be flying in this helicopter. But that his flying in a helicopter didn't mean anything if it didn't have some immediate impact on things that were happening on the ground. And the whole movie became about how do I engineer a sequence where the team all has things to do, and if any one member of that team was removed, it all would have gone to seed. And even then, I only had the vaguest sense of it going into that village days before we shot it.
That sequence, just with the IMAX scope to it.
Yeah.
Is that on an Empire podcast? You said last year that you showed Tom a picture of something. And he said, "I can't wait to fall off that." Was that the helicopter or?
That was Pulpit Rock in Norway.
Oh no! Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We had figured out the helicopter sequence, and we knew that it was going to end on a cliff somewhere, but we couldn't find a cliff like that anywhere in New Zealand.
Okay.
New Zealand, everything was sloping downward. And I kept saying to the location guy, not something he can fall down. It needs to be something he can fall off.
Right.
And he brought me that picture. And when I brought it to Tom, he was like, that's it.
The thing.
That's it. And the trick became how to create the helicopter sequence so that it would end on that mountain with both of those characters together. And that really was the big challenge of that sequence.
And I love that. I mean, I think if that sequence has any theme, it's subverting expectation. Because you're sitting there and you're like, Ethan's gonna get out of the helicopter before it hits him. No, it hits him. And it's he's not gonna crash it. He's gonna crash with the helicopter. Was that something because I know these movies, they don't exactly stop on a dime.
Yeah.
So is that something that you're coming up with leading up to the shoot, or was that in there in the original outline?
It really became the demands of, we want to have this confrontation between these two characters, and we want to have this helicopter chase between these two characters. And Benji, when he asked that question, saying, if he's in another helicopter, how are you going to get it? That was our question. And so a lot of what you see the team going through, that's why when I introduced the film last night, I said, watching a Mission Impossible movie, the experience of watching it is very much like the experience of making it. A lot of times we put together these sequences not knowing how we're going to solve these problems. And it's always just about doing it in a way that just feels real enough because they're so outrageous.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I like that question, another question that's asked in the film, in addition to how the hell are we going to do this? We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Is not a question, but I love that Ethan says throughout the movie, "I'm so sorry." I've 6 movies in, we have not seen him express the emotional toll.
Yeah.
This has, and was that a conscious effort from you?
From the very beginning.
Okay.
When Tom asked me to come back to do another one, I said, well, but a new director has come on for every one, and that's the precedent.
Right.
And he said, precedents are made to be broken. I said, all right, well, I'll come back, but I want to maintain that aesthetic. I want it to feel like a different director.
Yeah.
And I want to make a very different movie from Rogue Nation. Rogue Nation tipped its hat to Ghost Protocol, and, Ghost Protocol wasn't broken. We didn't try to fix it.
Right.
I said, I don't think we can do that 3 times in a row. It's going to become kind of cute. And so I want to do something more emotional. And I've never really been allowed inside Ethan's head, and I want this movie to do that. I said, what do you want to do? And he said, well, I want to tie up the story with Julia. Everybody keeps asking me wherever I go.
Yeah.
They're asking me, what about Julia? And we thought we had tied it up in Ghost Protocol.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, we can do that, but you got to do it in a way that it's not going to end up on the cutting room floor. And I need to reintroduce that character. You can't assume that people have seen every other Mission Impossible. So I pitched him the opening of the movie, which is the opening you saw. And that was the very first scene we came up with.
The dream sequence.
Yes. And from that moment on, we were in different territory. We were starting an action movie in a way action movies don't begin.
Right.
Not because we were saying, ooh, let's be different. It was simply, well, what would the story require? And we just, everything that you're seeing in the movie that feels subversive is just us following the story where the story wanted to go.
As a huge fan of 3, I love that you guys wrap up Julia, and I thought it was such a ballsy move to open with a dream sequence.
Thank you.
Is that, not to be a mission nerd or anything, but is that supposed to be Lake Watica where they got married in 3?
Or
it can be now.
It can be. Well, that's just it. It's we actually, to get to that location, took off from Lake Wanaka.
Oh, nice.
We were in New Zealand and it all sort of came home. We didn't make any conscious effort to do that, but when we found that location, that's a place called Milford Sound,
Okay.
which is actually quite beautiful. We had 1 hour to shoot that
Holy
sequence.
shit.
Yeah.
Nicely done.
Thank you very much.
In terms of your visual approach, I know you said that was important to you to be distinct, and the movie, like, it feels like, you know, if Gordon Willis had like a 3-way with 3 Days of the Condor and Michael Mann, like, and I like it, like I'm watching this movie, I'm going, I think this is your best directed.
Wow.
Visually.
Thank you.
And 2 sequences that really like felt very Pakula-y to me was the funeral beat, which I don't know how you guys got away with keeping that in there for it's such a small beat and such a big movie. Like, you think that would be the first thing cut.
Yeah.
And I also love the oneer where Ethan is imagining the first heist with Lane. Can you talk about how you pulled those 2 scenes off?
Thank you. Well, first of all, you're speaking about that. When you say Gordon Willis, you are talking about the cornerstone of everything I think cinematography is.
Yeah.
I
mean, you got 2 eyes and a heart, so.
I mean, yeah, but what I realized about, people ask me, who's your favorite director? And I say Gordon Willis. Nice. Gordon Willis has such a distinct impact over so many movies with so many different directors, from Woody Allen to Francis Ford Coppola to Alan Pakula. Right. He's a distinctly powerful filmmaker in his own right, and the sequence you're talking about, that oneer, when I was pitching to Tom the breakout, he said, you know, the rule of every Mission Impossible is you have to show how something is supposed to happen before you show how it all goes wrong, and he said, you know, when we're describing the sequence, I want to see what they plan to happen. And I said, I'm going to take that a step further, and I'm not going to let you know it. and then I designed it as something that was going to be that was going to be MOS. It was going to be shot without sound. I knew from the very beginning it was going to have music. I never considered for a moment using that particular cue, which is the same music playing over the wedding at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, nice.
And that piece was written by Lorne Balfe before we ever started shooting the film. And as I started, and I don't cut with temp music. I edit the entire movie together before I ever put music in.
Oh, wow.
And as a result, you had the freedom to drop this piece of music throughout the movie, and it worked in scene after scene after scene. And it became sort of a theme for Ethan's regret, all of his emotional baggage that he's carrying with him, and that became more or less the theme of the film.
That's awesome. And can you talk about the little funeral beat? How you guys came up with that?
The St. Paul's.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it was originally going to be a wedding.
Oh.
And we had talked about a wedding and talked about a funeral. Somebody said the funeral was going to be too heavy. It was going to be a little bit depressing, and I said, great, then it's going to be more inappropriate, and that'll be funnier. But the shot that reveals the coffin, where Ethan is walking through, it's all done in a oneer. That was just coverage. We didn't think that that's how the shot was going to play, and it wasn't until I saw it on the monitor and realized this is actually funny all by itself, and I changed the entire way we shot the scene.
Awesome.
The real impetus of all of that was, we started on the roof where Ethan runs along and jumps from one building to another, where he ultimately broke his foot.
Yeah.
And we were there, and we saw Blackfriars Bridge, we saw the Tate Modern, we could see St. Paul's, and it became very clear to us that all of these pieces within this geography were great for the set piece itself. So we didn't even think of St. Paul's until after we picked the roof. And then it became the question of how do I get him onto the roof of St. Paul's? And originally we had a meeting that was going to happen up inside. It was way too complicated. And the simplest solution became, I'm going to force him up those stairs. And how do I funnel Ethan into that place? And all of the choreography, everything you're seeing is just what forces Ethan to have to go where we want him to go for the sequence.
That's
and then
awesome.
the funeral was this beautiful discovery.
That's a great little beat.
Thank you. I'm so glad you picked those two moments. Those are two.
Oh,
those
well,
are
thank
some
you.
of the-
Yeah, me and the Fandango guy were nerding out about those scenes, so I had to
that's
talk
great.
about it. Also, Simon said that the movie, when he first got story for the movie, it was 30 pages of dialogue and an outline. And I know you said you didn't want to start without a complete script.
Yeah.
I just, what's harder to do, that while you're trying to chase a bullet with another bullet while riding a horse,
Yeah.
making this movie, or
Yeah.
or writing the full script?
Probably, in retrospect, writing the full script.
Okay.
Because what happens is when you write the script, you then tend to go out looking for places that match what you imagined.
Okay.
And what I did going into this one, based on what I learned from Rogue Nation, is I told the studio, I'm not going to start writing the screenplay until I know where I'm going to shoot it. I encountered situations like that on Rogue Nation, which were really frustrating to the crew.
Yeah.
So they said, well, we don't know what to look for if we don't know what's happening there. And I said, well, I don't know what to shoot. I don't know what story to tell if I don't know where it's happening. I can invent action all day long, but then we're going to kill ourselves finding the place to shoot it. So just find something that looks cool and I'll tell you what's going to happen. And I drove my crew crazy. And nothing that you saw in this movie existed before we knew where it was going to be shot.
Oh, wow.
Except for the opening scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
The callbacks to one in this movie, I was a huge fan of that one. Were those intentional?
You say callbacks plural?
I thought there were, in terms of having the reference to Max, and now we have her daughter.
Yes.
The helicopter ski, Baldwin getting stabbed with the knife at the fence kind of felt like a callback to one to me.
Oh, that's interesting.
That wasn't intentional?
No, there was the one intentional callback. You nailed the one intentional callback,
Which
which was the Max. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Were there other callbacks?
There's definitely a nod to the TV series when he opens the book and we use the reel-to-reel
Yeah, I love
tape
that.
recorder. But it's interesting, for the most part, so many people were looking at all of the Easter eggs I'd laid out in Rogue Nation, and I was determined that was the first thing I let go of so that it would not
great.
feel so much. That was one of
It's
the
so
things that was
distracting.
distinctly the Chris McQuarrie that directed that movie. I said, let's do something completely different. And I'm always amused when people see things that they think are, like, if you have a pigeon anywhere in your movie, they think you're referencing John Woo. They think it's a dog. And I was like, no, actually, there's just a lot of pigeons in Paris, and they
Right.
just happen to be going through. But that's interesting, that one.
I'm
through the
surprised that
fence.
wasn't intentional because
No.
it felt direct.
No, just kind of,
That's awesome.
it's the way the scene came together.
And
Everything that happens to Alec in this movie was Alec's suggestion.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm kind of bummed he died.
Here's the great thing about movies. There's a 2-year gap between
Right.
5 and 6, so 7 can start 2 years earlier.
That's true.
He's not going anywhere.
I like how, unlike the other missions, every character in this has their little hero moment, especially Luther.
Yeah.
And was that something that, you and Ving came up with together, or was that just, look, this is what we're going to do for Luther?
It was funny. I said, look, it's Luther's turn. The guy has been in a van
awesome.
for 5 movies, and this is really the one where I want him to carry the emotional weight of the movie. He's known Ethan longer than any of these characters, and he's the one. If anybody is going to tell the audience what's going on in Ethan's mind, it's got to be Luther. And if anyone has a history with these characters, it's got to be Luther. And I think what was really surprising was watching Ving over the course of the movie, who I think is accustomed to being the guy in the van. Ving will come to set and go, just give me the line, I'll give it to you 5 times. Because he knows you're just going to cut to me for this line. And he would come to set every day and say, I really like where this is going. I see what you're doing here. And he really rose to the occasion. That scene that he has with with
Julia?
Ilsa.
Oh, it's
Just
yeah.
absolutely. His all of his really emotional moments in the movie, you feel a sense that he grounds the movie in such a way and brings such an emotional depth to it. And the first time he said to Ilsa, when we were shooting the scene where he said, "We're in this mess because Ethan wouldn't let me die."
That's a great
The
line.
way he said it, I remember being so profoundly, you're making a movie,
It's a gut punch.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I knew, oh, this is gonna work. This is gonna be great.